5th edition. I've been kind of holding off on doing more of the character class overview videos to get a little more familiar with the new edition. And I've got to say, there's not a lot about this edition that I dislike. There are some mechanics that I'm not used to. I don't necessarily dislike them, but I haven't gotten used to them yet. I do like the simplification of a lot of combat rules. They've taken flanking completely out of the equation. So now, instead of having, you get this much bonus if you flank, cover gives you this. And now it's a simple, if you have an advantage on something, you get to roll what's called a advantage die. Instead of rolling 1d20, you roll 2, and you take the better of the 2 rolls. Conversely, you also have disadvantage rolls, where if you are at a disadvantage, you roll a disadvantage die, and you roll 2 d20s, and you take the worst of the 2 scores. And I do like that because it does simplify it immensely. There are some issues I'm coming into noticing. XP brackets are a little bit more broader spread, and at the same time, it could just be that I haven't played on the character side of a game for who knows how long, and I just haven't been used to having to roll for XP. The spells are an interesting situation. I do like the way they've done it. Cantrips are at will. You do not have to waste time memorizing them. If you're a wizard or a cleric, anybody who memorizes your spells, your cantrips do not require memorization. You know them all day, every day, and you can cast them all day, every day. The Vancian magic system has returned from its hiatus in 4th edition, where everybody was kind of some sort of a mage. It has gone back to spell slots and spells per day. What I like about this is they've kind of altered it a little bit. Now, instead of having to memorize all these spells, and you can only cast that spell as many times as you memorize it, like in 3rd edition, if you wanted to just cast 3 fireballs, you had to have 3 3rd-level spell slots and memorize fireball 3 times. Now, spell slots are simply that. They are a slot that you take a spell and you plug it in, and that's how you cast it. If you want to cast a 1st-level spell in a 5th-level spell slot, you can. And anything that's part of the mechanics, damage, range, things of that nature, creatures affected, anything like that is increased as well. They have done away with the multiple cure spells. Instead of having cure light, cure moderate, cure all that, they now have a single spell called Cure Wounds, and it levels as you put it into progressively higher and higher spell slots. I do not have a lot to say on many of the classes outside of Paladins, whatever those are. I do not have a lot to say of classes outside of Paladins because I am playing a Paladin in my group right now, and I have got to say that Paladins have been brought back from their relative obscurity, because now the lawful good restriction is no longer in effect. You do not have to be lawful good to be a Paladin. They actually offer 3 progressive, 3 paths that the Paladin can take at 3rd level. There's the Paladin of Devotion, the Paladin of Justice, if you would, which is what everybody thinks of when they think of a Paladin. They're the Knight Errant, the Chevalier, the what have you. Your oath takes you down the path of justice, what's right, what's good in the world. And because the Paladin path has 3 branching paths, they get what are called oath spells, which are similar to domain spells that clerics get, only these are spells that you get to cast without wasting a spell slot, without wasting a preparation, you get these pretty much to cast at will once a day, I believe. I just now got to the point where I have them, and I'm still, like I said, I'm still wrapping my head around the new rules. There's also a Paladin of the Forest, Paladin of the Fae, whatever something of that nature, where instead of devoting yourself to a lord or a set of tenets, you are devoting yourself to freedom, to life, to the light of benefit of all. Basically, you are the knight errant of Fae spirits, and through the course of your progressions, you gain various things that are very nature-oriented. There is also a third path where your paladin is basically Batman. It is the Paladin of Vengeance. You have sworn vengeance upon something. You get to mark a target of vengeance, and until you name a new target or you have defeated or apprehended your mark, you gain bonuses against him. And there's even a point in which where you turn into a blazing angelic form of just wrath. And the only way I can really think to explain it is, if you take the path of the Oath of Vengeance, you are basically going as Batman. If Frank Miller had continued to write Batman instead of Sin City. I do know that there are a lot of differences in the spells and magic and combat now. Armor class is very different now. Instead of having 10 plus your dex plus, they've cut it straight down to 10 plus whatever your armor is. You do get a little bit from dexterity, but for the most part, when you turn to the armor page and you say, I want to wear studded leather armor, it's going to say, okay, your armor class is this. And that's good. I like that. There is another piece of mechanics that go into attacks. Now you have your D20 roll, and instead of just your strength or your dex, depending on what the weapon is, if it's a light weapon, finesse weapon, or a ranged weapon, you can use your dex instead of your strength. You take your die roll, your relevant modifier, dex or strength, or intelligence for attack rolls made by wizards, or charisma for attack rolls made by sorcerers, and you also add in what is called a proficiency. This is what keeps things tied down and simple. They have pared the skill list down to a bare minimum. It's almost even fewer skills than what was in 4th edition. But they are many skills that have been rolled into each other, many skills that were seen as redundant were taken out, and you get a certain number of skills as pertaining to your class and your background to be proficient in, which means you get to add the relevant modifier plus whatever your proficiency bonus is, in addition to your roll. And I kind of like it, because now you get to actually, mechanically speaking, show that you are proficient with a weapon, you are proficient with a skill, instead of just, I have a +3. Let me see what I can do. It's really streamlined and combat oriented. One of the things I do remember is 3rd edition and 3.5 was always boasting quicker, faster, stronger, and compared to AD&D and 2nd edition AD&D, it was faster. There was a lot less math and a lot fewer contingency rules that you had to keep in mind. But it's nowhere near as quick as this. You can actually have a pretty decent combat, 5, 6, 7 rounds in a much shorter time, because you're not trying to figure out how much of a bonus you have from your attacker being prone. They're at disadvantage. Their saving throws are thrown at a disadvantage. You have advantage on the attack. You don't have to sit there and wonder, oh, do I get to add this to my armor class for this effect? No. You have chain shirt. You have a chain shirt. You get +16 to your armor. Its weapons are simplified down. You have this. It does this much damage. It's a finesse weapon. You have the choice of using your dex instead of your strength. Character attributes are a little weird now, as is starting situations. You still get bonuses from certain races. Humans now, you have two choices. You can either add one to all of your attributes at character starting, or you can add two to two attributes. I believe it is. It's either one or two attributes you can add to. And it represents the versatility of the humans, whereas instead of in 3rd edition where they got an extra feat and extra points and whatnot, feats are now optional. And I wasn't sure I was going to like that until I actually started playing and saw why they made it an optional thing. Because there are some players where having too many choices will actually lock them up. They'll sit there and they'll be like, I don't know what skills I want to have. It's streamlined down now. You're a fighter who was a merchant, who was raised in a merchant family. These are the skills you have, you're really good in, and you get a bonus in them. Too many feats, well, we're not playing with feats until a certain point in time. It doesn't matter now. It's whatever you want to do. You can, if you don't want to play with feats, you don't have to deal with feats. If you want to play with feats, you can play with feats. There's a lot of things in this that are really, really great, and I'm having trouble finding problems with it outside of some spell balance issues that I probably would not have added in there. Like I mentioned in my first video on D&D Next, my initial thoughts, the fact that there's a spell called Firebolt, which is a cantrip, which means you don't have to prepare it, and you can cast it every round, as long as you're not dead. It's a wizard's cantrip spell, and it does 2d10 damage, and it has a range of 120 feet. Now, when you get to 3rd level spells, you can cast Fireball. Firebolt kind of pales in comparison because of all the d6s. But it's still, that's kind of powerful for a cantrip, for a spell that wizards, sorcerers, and other arcane spellcasting classes that just get to spam that spell at early levels. You know, it kind of takes the pizzazz out of Magic Missile and Burning Hands. Now you're just kind of sitting there remembering back to your 3rd edition mages going, well, I was kind of impressive until this. Smites for paladins are impressive now. You now have an ability called Channel Divinity, and channeling your divinity allows you to do several things. Channeling your divinity is how you activate your smite skill. Using smite burns a spell slot, so you do kind of have to be careful with it, but when you burn the spell slot to activate a smite, it is good for up to 1 minute as long as you concentrate on the spell. Meaning, as long as it's within the span of that spell and you don't cast another spell that requires concentration in it, that smite is good until the combat is over or you reach 1 minute of game time, which in D&D is 10 rounds. And let me put it forward to you this way. Just a general smite adds 2d8 to your damage, plus another additional d8 for every spell slot above 1st. So let's say you have a longsword. That's a d8 right there. And you're channeling your divinity to do a smite. But instead of just a regular smite, you choose to do Thunderous Smite. So now you have the d8 from your sword, the 2d8 from the smite, and the 2d6 thunder sonic damage from the Thunderous Smite. And in addition to all of that, whoever you strike with this smite must make a saving throw or be forced backwards 10 feet and knocked prone. In our last encounter, in our last session, I walked into the central tent of an imposter of people who are impersonating military personnel. And being a military background myself, I could spot it. I decided that since none of my team members came into the tent with me, they were more concerned with some prisoners who were in the stocks outside and getting, just kind of looking around. I stormed into the tent and immediately confronted people. And I started saying some rather scathing things to the lieutenant. And the DM said that the guards and attendants inside the tent are starting to edge away from me as though they're afraid. And I decided that instead of letting them go first, I was going to start the party myself. And I was going to do it in such a way that my teammates would recognize right then and there that some serious shit was going down. So I had gone in there with my sword out, not in a threatening position, but I had just had the sword out. And I immediately started channeling divinity and thunderous smote the nearest guard. And between the attack roll I rolled, plus the additional from my proficiency bonus, my strength, and the bonuses the weapon gave me in general, plus the thunder damage, plus the smite and everything, I fairly well threw him through the better part of half a city block, taking the tent with him. And the thundercrack alerted my teammates, combat started, initiative went down. Initiative hasn't changed in God knows how many revisions. And I'm actually liking this paladin because what a lot of people don't realize is even though I'm playing a lawful good paladin, I'm not lawful stupid. And I'm not lawful nice. I'm lawful good. You're impersonating a member of the military. That's an act of high treason in this world. I have no sympathy for you. Your sergeants, your corporals, they probably don't even realize, if they see somebody with an official looking uniform and they say, congratulations, you're now a soldier, they're not going to ask a lot of questions. So combat went on and I'm dealing massive amounts of damage because I think we went 6 rounds, so I still have my thunderous smite activated. We were at 5th level, so we had 2 attacks per round without even trouble. So each time I hit a guy, they have to make a save versus getting knocked back and prone. And I've got my charisma is maxed out. In 5th edition, you actually cannot go above a 20 for an attribute unless you have a magical enhancement, such as a manual of bodily exercise or a tome of expansive intellect or things of that nature, where it not only gives you an additional points, but also expands your maximum by 2 points. So I found a manual of gainful exercise, which increased my strength by 2, but it also increased my maximum from 20 to 22. And unless I find something like a periapt of charisma or some of those other charisma increasing devices, I cannot raise my charisma above a 20. And I like that because it means that at the levels where you gain attribute increases, you're not agonizing over if you want to if you want to increase this skill even more, or if you want to put it into this one. Once you hit 20 with your scores, you can't push it any further until you find items that increase your skills, your attributes. And every time you do, it not only increases your max and your modifier for it, your skill modifier, it increases the skills attached to it, because paladins now add their charisma modifier to their damage. they add it to their saves. It's insane the amount of stuff that paladins can do now, and it's in every class. I've seen a lot of things in every class where they say add relevant modifier to this, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because my modifier for charisma is what goes into my spellcasting DCs, and it's not overly impressive. I only have a 16 for a save DC on my spells, but when you have to make a will save against a 16 and you're a henchman who generally don't have which according to the stat blocks I've read, do not have very high will saves to begin with, they're getting knocked back 10 feet every time I hit them, and they're knocked to their feet. They're knocked prone, and being knocked prone means now you have to spend half your movement to get back on your feet instead of taking a full round, which never made sense why it takes 6 seconds for you to climb to your feet. But now it takes half your movement, and that's something else that's changed in 5th edition that I really like. Now you can split your movement. You still can't move more than 30 feet. You still can't move more than 6 blocks. But you can move, make an action, and then move the rest of your movement. You can make an action, move, and then move again in a different direction. You can split it up however you want. You can move slightly, make an action, move, and then move. As long as you don't go more than 30 feet total movement, you can move multiple times in your turn. You can split it up however you want. You know, threatened squares has been simplified and streamlined down a little bit. It's a lot easier now. There's the disengage action now. You don't have to. It's basically you disengage, you step back from fighting, and you do not draw an attack of opportunity. There's also reactions now, where certain effects trigger what are called reactions, which are a bonus action on the behalf of the target NPC or the character. It's a free bonus action that is as a reaction to an effect. There are no more minor actions. Minor actions have kind of been done by the wayside. There are now free actions and there are bonus actions. And you only get one bonus action per round, I believe. I don't really have a lot of things that require me to use the bonus action, so it hasn't really sunk into my head yet as much as other things. There are a much better spell progression for a lot of classes now. The Paladin gets a lot more spells a lot quicker than it used to. So do Rangers, Druids, which I will be talking about very soon, I promise. Bards actually are a little less useless in 5th edition, which is not to say they were useless in 3rd and 4th edition. Not by any means. It's just that they are more attractive than they have been in recent past. The entirety of multi-classing has been altered, albeit in a very small way. Multi-classing now, you only get certain, instead of getting everything from first level that you got from your new class, you only get certain things, which is shown on a table. I'll actually look that up here real quick. But for example, if I wanted to multi-class from my Paladin into Wizard, this is so fascinating, I know it is. I should have put a tab on this page. I really hate making you guys wait. Okay, for example, if as a Paladin, if I wanted to multi-class into Wizard, I needed to have a base intelligence score of 13 just to be able to qualify to multi-class into Wizard. And all I would get I would get nothing from multi-classing into Wizard. Whereas if I was a Wizard and I multi-classed into Paladin, if I had the 13 strength and charisma required, as a Wizard going into Paladin, I would get light and medium armor, shield, simple weapons, and martial weapons. So really, the only thing multi-classing into a wizard would get me as a paladin is arcane spell slots. And the interesting thing is, the spell slots kind of stack. Determining your total number of spell slots, you would take as many levels of wizard and 1/2 of your paladin levels rounded down to figure out how many spell slots you would get per day. And there's a table that shows you once you do the math and everything. But, and I haven't tested this yet, and I need to sit down with some members of my group and talk it over. Paladins use spell slots for their smite and their turn undead, or turn the unholy as it's called now. Which, instead of just turning undead, you now turn extraplanar creatures and fae. So if it's not native to this plane, it's undead, or it's fae, your turn the unholy will cause them to turn. And if you're a cleric using turn undead, you actually have a chance to explode the skeletons. Yes, they will burst into flame. But, as I was saying, paladins use spell slots to power their smites. Any spell slot. At all. So it is completely conceivable. Right now I have 4 first level spell slots and 2 second level spell slots. So that's 6 spell slots. I could smite somebody for 6 different spells. But as a wizard, I gain extra spell slots to start off with, and arcane cantrips. So let's say I can't quite get to them to smack them with my sword in that first round or 2. Hey, I'm a first level wizard. I have Firebolt. Here's 2d10s of damage to the face. Or I can use an arcane spell slot, I believe. As I said, we're going to sit down and actually go over this. Arcane spell slots to power divine smites. They've cut down a lot of the feat sections where there's many fewer feats where a lot of them have been rolled into one. There are many skills that have been rolled into each other. Look, listen, and search. Search, spot, listen, rather, have been rolled into perception. Now they're all one roll. You either see it, you hear it, you notice it. You don't have to make, now you don't have to worry about which of those 3 points you're going to put skill ranks into. Skill ranks are gone. No longer have to do skill ranks. Now it's the skill, which is the modifier it's based off of. So athletics, it's a strength, whatever your strength modifier is, plus the d20. And if you happen to be proficient in athletics, that's one of the skills you chose to put your proficiency in. It's the skill modifier plus your proficiency bonus plus your roll. Everything is much tighter. It's much more streamlined. It's not perfect. It's not perfect by any means. And I know I've kind of harped upon about paladins in this, but that's because that's what I am most intimate in this edition. But it's not perfect. But if you've never played before, in any way, shape, or form, this is the best edition I have seen so far to get started in. Without a doubt. 4th edition was really easy, but it was not anything like classic D&D. 3rd edition was easier than AD&D, but it still had a lot of math, and it was still really complicated, and leveling your character was still kind of tough, convoluted. This, it's fairly simple to build a character. Doesn't take very long at all. There are still multiple ways of doing it. They talk about point buy, they talk about standard array, and you can go back to rolling your d6s. they talk about 4d6 dropping the lowest one. I'm actually, the next time I build a character, I'm going to try using AD&D's die roll characteristics, where you roll 3d6 in order. Just because I want to see what happens. And what that means is I roll 3d6, and whatever I come up with, that's my strength. Then I roll again, that's my dexterity, that's my constitution, that's my intelligence, that's my wisdom, that's my charisma. I don't get to move them around. It's as they show up on the sheet, and it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a challenge. I'm looking forward to it. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it in this campaign because my paladin's got, depending on how she's being attacked, she either has a 19 or a 21 AC. If she's being attacked by ranged weapons, she has a 21 AC because she happened to come across a shield of arrow catching, which in this edition it only says projectiles. It doesn't specify they have to be arrows. It's just anything, any ranged attack aimed at her, the shield will automatically catch, and therefore I have a 21 AC. I can also redirect it if it's attacking an ally within 5 feet. Otherwise, I just have a 19 AC, and the 19 AC is pretty high. You can't really go any higher with the setting. So I have to say that I don't think she's going to drop anytime soon, unless we butt our heads into something bigger than we really should. The best part that I see about this is, new players can really get into building their characters. It's not hard to level the character up. The one thing that they've added that was not present in any other edition, it was kind of hinted at 4th edition, and this is why a lot of people didn't like it. In 5th edition D&D, you're not really your class until 3rd level. And that sounds weird, but here's how it works. At 3rd level, a lot of your class features are unlocked. For example, I didn't get spells until I was 3rd level. I had my lay on hands, and I had some of my divine abilities, like smite and things of that nature, but I didn't have spell slots with which to use it. 3rd level, they opened up my spell slots. 3rd level, I got, Channel Divinity. I got my oath spells. Fighters, until 3rd level, you're just a soldier. You know how to swing a sword. Then at 3rd level, you get to choose any of 3 paths: Weapon Master, Eldritch Knight, which is the closest thing I can think of to the Sword Mage or the Blade Singer from 3rd and 4th editions. Rogues, you're not really a rogue until 3rd level. At 3rd level, you choose Cat Burglar, Assassin, or Street Thief. And, wizards, you get spells, but at 3rd level, you get the option to specialize if you want to specialize, and that opens up all sorts of new abilities. So it's a little weird that until you're a 3rd level adventurer, you don't get to really play your class. Mephit wants to be in the video. So come on. She's determined to be in the video, which is fine because this is a very, very informal video. But it's a little frustrating, but at the same time, you can roleplay it. You can say that, you're just a journeyman. You're an apprentice paladin. You're still technically a squire. You are, you're still learning how to do things as a fighter. You haven't graduated combat school yet. You're still learning how to cast more powerful spells. They just haven't trusted you with specialization yet. It's part of your... Alright. It's just really, really weird. You're not a paladin until 3rd level. You're not a fighter until 3rd level. You're not a rogue. You're not a wizard. You're not a bard. It's almost like you're an apprentice for 2 levels. Like you're finishing your apprenticeship without being anywhere near your mentor. And that's something I don't really know. It has to be something that you role play out for it to make any sense whatsoever. But yeah, that's 5th edition in kind of a nutshell. It's fast. It's really fast. It really has a lot of interesting changes. It has changes that are for the better, I think, like the whole lack of flanking now, and it has some changes that could stand to be tweaked a little bit with house rules, like a cantrip that does anywhere from 2 to 20 points of damage at 1st level that you can just spam like you had a 30-round clip. So there are things that need to be tweaked. I'm not saying it's unbalanced, because there are, a mage being able to throw a firebolt that does between 2 and 20 points of damage at 1st level, and me being able to baseball swing a sword and do no less than 4 points of damage, and possibly going all the way up into the 20s myself. It's impressive. Whoever the main design team was on this edition, they did a pretty good job. I'm not saying that it's ever going to replace Pathfinder or 3rd edition in my mind. Those were what I started playing. 3rd edition, 3.5 especially, and I kind of branched into other editions from there. I never really played a lot of 4th. Played a bunch of Pathfinder, which a lot of people consider to be D&D 3.75. But if I had to recommend an edition for players to start with, I'd definitely say 5th edition is the best way to go, because it's geared not only to keep the veteran players, it's also geared to help new players get in the game faster. It doesn't dumb the rules down, but it explains them clearly, and they have simplified a lot of the things that were complicated, that even myself, having played for years now, almost over a decade, still don't fully understand, and would have to reference the book just to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding it. So if I had to vote, if I had to grade, if I had to rate 5th edition, I'd give it it's a solid 4 out of 5. It's still new enough, so I wouldn't be able to say that it's worth a 5. It's definitely worth a 4. But, given my opinion, I'd still rather play Pathfinder, just because it's so familiar. I don't have to look rules up every 5 seconds. I'm still looking rules up in this. For those of you out there that are wondering what's the best way to start, this is the best way to start. This is the best core rulebook on the market right now. And frankly, from what I hear, there's not going to be a glut of rulebooks in this edition. They've released the 3 main core rulebooks: the Player's Handbook, the Dungeons Master's Guide, the Monster Manual. And from what I understand, that's probably going to be it. They may release splat books or something like that. I haven't really heard one way or the other. But they're trying to keep it simple. They're trying to keep it so that you're not spending a lot of money on rule books just to play a game. And I like that. Wizards of the Coast has taken a really smart stance in 5th edition. And they have brought back Dragon Magazine. It is in an ebook format, and it's not exactly all that it was when it was back in print format, but they're trying. So, starters, get the Player's Handbook. It explains everything you need to know about how to roll up a character, how to play a character, how the mechanics work. If you're wanting to learn how to run the game, the DMG is great. That's where all the really great loot tables are, the magic item tables, how to build a world, how to build villains. Monster Manual is amazing, because right there you have all your classic monsters. They've condensed down creatures like dragons are all in one entry with divisions for the various kinds. Devils, demons, elementals, they've all condensed those down into multi-entry systems instead of having them spread off through by their names in the books. So they really condensed the monster manual down just by making it a codex instead of an index for multi-species races. So you turn to dragons, it gives you the basis about dragons, and then it gives you the stats for each of the individual types of dragons. It's really great. They talk about all sorts of things in it. They talk about all sorts of great ideas for world building in the DMG. They give you backgrounds and paths and creeds, oaths, all sorts of things to flesh your character's concept out in this, which I advise so much in my character building videos. It's just, they have really stepped up their game to try to attract new players in this day of MMORPGs, which you really need to, because, you know, as video games become more and more interactive and more diverse, tabletop games need to have something to keep up with them. I mean, I'm not saying that 5th edition is the end-all be-all of D&D. It's just the most recent edition. I know people that still play 1st edition AD&D and have slide rules and calipers and things like that just to figure out what the hell they're rolling. So, my opinion of 5th edition, it's a great edition. It's a great piece of work. It's a great conglomeration of everything that has come before. They've kind of cherry-picked all the good parts and put it together and smoothed out the rough spots where they welded it together. So, solid 4 out of 5. 7.5, 8 out of 10. If you're interested in starting to play D&D, this is the way to go. I'll see you guys next time.